forceps up the eustachian tube. By putting this tube in, they have no pain. So when we put these tubes in kids, they fly and they have the easiest time on the plane of anyone. All right, let's go back to the guy who stuck the Q-tip through here. Yeah, if they just made a hole in the eardrum, most of them will close on their own. If they don't, we just repair that. Remember, in the middle ear, there's also these bones, the ossicles, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Very important because we have to connect this big disc to that small disc, just like the magnifying glass, so we can transmit the sound all the way through. Occasionally, when someone sticks a pencil or a Q-tip in their ear, they break one of these bones. These bones, hammer, anvil, stirrup. Stirrup I buy. Hammer, maybe. I don't know. I watched a lot of Bonanza. That doesn't look like an anvil, but that's what they call it. Here's how big they really are. So it shows you they're really tiny. So when you stick a Q-tip in, or a pencil, that's like Land of the Giants compared to these things. You can really damage these, and people do. Here's an example of an ossicle, the anvil, that's missing. It's not connected here. That's not to explain how that got damaged, but it is. Sound wave hits the eardrum, vibrates bone 1, vibrates what's left of bone 2, but it doesn't connect to here, so you get a large conductive hearing loss. That sound wave can't amplify and get where it needs to, so if anything, the eardrum is acting like an ear plug because the sound can't get down to here. And there are various ways to repair that. We have all these prosthetic pieces that we can connect the hammer to the stirrup. Here's another one. Here's the eardrum. Here's the hammer. Here's the anvil that we just replaced. Here's the stirrup. Now, it doesn't matter that you have 3 bones. You just have to have a nice connection between the eardrum and this membrane here. Actually, birds have what's called a columellar strut. They have 1 bone from here to here. They don't have this 3-bone thing. Here's another example. Here's the eardrum with 1 prosthesis right to the stirrup. Very close to what a bird has. Here's another type here. And we see all these different types. There are different diseases that erode different parts of these bones. So there's a whole industry out there of different prostheses to connect the eardrum up to this, whatever pieces are missing. And you don't know till you get to the operating room when you lift the eardrum up like a manhole cover. And under the microscope, you look and say, oh, this is what's missing. And you have to be aware of what prostheses are there so you can pull the right one out just to snap in place. There's another entity known as otosclerosis. Otosclerosis runs in families, more in women. We see it revs up sometimes in pregnant women, although once in a while we see it in a guy. And what happens is it's a process where we don't know why. It may have to do with lack of fluoride in the water, but the bone right around that membrane where the sound wave has to transmit gets all sclerotic and scarred. It's almost like it rusts this bone in place. So the sound wave goes in, vibrates the eardrum, vibrates bone 1, bone 2, and it just can't vibrate this bone. So these patients, I actually had a patient today on this, and we usually can tell because it happens in both ears. And when you see that type of a conductive hearing loss in both ears, that's usually what you know you'll find when you lift the eardrum up. Well, that can be repaired. I mean, you can remove this bone, get rid of this sclerotic material, drill or laser an opening into the inner ear, and then put a prosthesis from the anvil right into here. Here's the stirrup taken out. Here's some type of a prosthesis. Here's another one. You can hook this around the anvil and put that into the inner ear. And here's an example of the stirrup has been removed. And you can put this prosthesis and slip it right in there. Again, the goal to connect the eardrum to that window. So the sound wave can vibrate the eardrum, vibrate bone 1, 2, 3, and get that sound into that small membrane. Okay? Dizziness. The bane of my existence. Okay? I tried to find the best slide I could for this. Unfortunately, there are so many things that can create dizziness in the body. Everything from the heart, and arrhythmia, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, carotid disease. The books on dizziness are like this. The chapter on ear is like this. So there are so many things. Unfortunately, the poor inner ear gets blamed for every bout of dizziness, and they all end up on my doorstep. But a lot of them aren't coming from the ear, but we have to try to rule the ear out. And that's our problem with dizziness, because dizziness is so compromising to people, and we can't really see it. All we have are, we can examine the patient, but we can't see much because this is all the ear part. It's all embedded in the ear and bone. And when they come to my office, all we can do are different tests to try to see if the inner ear is functioning right. But we really do. We get a lot of patients who come in with dizziness that really have nothing to do with the ear. But there are some that are the ear. Now, we talked about how the ear does sound. Sound wave goes in, sound wave gets vibrated through. The cochlea translates that sound wave to nerve language. It goes up to the nerve. In a similar thing, in the inner ear, this whole area that we call the labyrinth, semicircular canals, that's the analogous structure for balance as the cochlea is for hearing. You know, we turn our head like this. The brain doesn't understand that. The brain needs nerve language for that as well. These semicircular canals are what take the position of your head in space, translate it into nerve language, so the nerve can take it to the brain. All right? Meniere's syndrome. Go ahead.
We must have two sets of this stuff then?
Some of us. Yes. Correct. So well, let me keep going, and I think this will answer what you're thinking. If not, you'll ask me after that. We're talking about Meniere's syndrome. Everyone comes to my office. My mother had Meniere's. I'm told I have Meniere's. I have more people that come to my office telling me they've been diagnosed with Meniere's than I, as an ear doctor, in practice 20 years, have ever told they have Meniere's. In other words, it's easy to just throw that diagnosis. Meniere was a Frenchman who, back in the 1850s, 1860s, described a syndrome where you get episodes of, in classic Meniere's, is your hearing drops. You can actually test it. You can actually see it's a nerve hearing loss. The ear gets full, loud ringing in the ear, and just vertigo. You're just spinning around. And that word vertigo is just a specific type of dizziness where the room is spinning. And then the next day, it's better. You feel washed out, and you're okay till the next episode happens. The feeling we know with Meniere's is this piece of the balance in the inner ear, this thing called the endolymphatic sac, forget the name, for whatever reason in these patients swells up and fills up with fluid. And when that happens, that's when the Meniere's episode happens. So there have been a lot of things that have been done over the years to try to keep this from swelling up. I'm not going to go into all the treatments for it, but that's what Meniere's is. Here's the inner ear structures. This is the cochlea that again translates the sound wave to nerve language. Here are the semicircular canals. Now look at the way that these are oriented. There are 3 in each ear. All right? To keep it simple, I'm just going to talk about one ear, but you're correct. They're on both ears, but if I go 6, it's going to throw. It's like 3-dimensional chess, at least from Star Trek. We look at these 3 canals. Look at the way they're oriented. There's 3 dimensions. The one that's oriented this way sends the message when the head is going like this. The one that's oriented this way tells when the head is like this. And the one's the other way tells when the head is like this. You turn your head in any way, each one of these sends its message to the brain. And when the brain sees the signal that these 3 are giving, it says, oh, we know, that means the head's like this. And when it sees these 3 combinations, it knows when the head's like this. So it's interesting that the way this is built is with the 3 dimensions, with the 3 different vectors, the 3 different planes. But you're correct, there's 3 on the other side too, so really the brain is getting 6 messages, 3 from each one. How do we see that area in our imaging studies? The MRI has really revolutionized how we look at the inner ear. You can see how clear the brain shows up on MRI. Here are the structures of a real bone blown up of the semicircular canals and the cochlea. Here's an MRI, how clear it is. Here are the semicircular canals. Here's the cochlea. And here are the nerves taking the messages to the brainstem, which is right here. The cerebellum, the brainstem. You can see it's pretty clear. Here's blown up that same picture, so you can see how clear we really can see these semicircular canals in the cochlea. Occasionally we'll find these acoustic neuromas, or tumors, in that inner ear. Not a cancer, it's a benign growth, but the problem is there's no space for that thing to grow. So it creates its own space, and unfortunately the space it creates is the structures for hearing and for balance. So patients will come in saying, I'm dizzy, or we test their hearing and we see there's a sudden drop, and when we do an MRI once in a while we'll find one of these. I don't know, with all the patients I see, maybe I pick up a dozen of these a year. And most of them now we watch, and they're slow growing, and some of them don't grow, but if they start to grow, then you have to either remove it or radiate it or something, otherwise the ear will lose all its hearing altogether. Same situation, sound goes in, vibrates all the sound wave, cochlea takes it to the brain as a nerve language. Here are the semicircular canals. We talked about the 3 orientations of them. Some guy's idea to try to give you that, and I was talking to myself whether or not I was going to put this slide in here, but some people need to see, here's someone's head, and here are these 3 orientations of the semicircular canals and 3 on the other side. How they work. Take a pot of water. The semicircular canal is a bony structure. It's filled with fluid. You take a pot of water filled with fluid. You turn the pot. It turns. The water turns after that. Same thing happens with these semicircular canals. They're bony structures filled with fluid. Along the floor of the semicircular canal are these hair cells that stick straight up. Now, same thing. You turn the head. The canal turns. Those hair cells, because they're in the fluid, they fall down like this. Well, that's the switch. And when they go down, that sends the message to the brain that the head is turning. As the fluid